r/NoSleep. Posted by you/likeeyedid. I went to visit my aunt in her village. Everything here smells rotten, even the people. If you see me staring at you at night, run. She'd warned me on the very first night, but of course, I didn't listen. Aunt Susan's home smells like a delicious blend of spices and herbs which she uses for cooking, medicine, and making perfumes. Her home is by far the most whimsical place I've ever seen, filled with all sorts of keepsakes, big or small. You can hardly see that the house has any walls because of all the big posters of old cities and movies, as well as Arabic wall carpets, from bright purple to deep green. My mother's older sister lives all by herself. She never got married, which is a big deal in our family. But Susan doesn't mind. She has her own house, her own life, and makes all her own choices. Her home truly is deserving of the word. However, as soon as I step out of the comfort of those bright walls, her village seems to suffocate me. I felt the tension of this place the second that I arrived at the train station. Everything was wrapped in a light fog, accompanied by an intense, foul smell that crept all the way down my nostrils. At first, I was happy to come here for a weekend, to escape the noise of the city and spend some days in a tiny village in western Germany. It was almost May, the sun was back, and I felt almost optimistic. I felt relieved to get away from my parents, my brother, and even from my new boyfriend for a while. The only weird part was that my mom was the one who suggested the trip, even though she hates it when I'm in touch with Susan because she's a bad influence. But now I've learned that this place is no home, it's an exile. And there is no sun, or at least you can hardly see it. I have no idea how weather generally works, but I certainly know that it can't be right to sit on a train for 6 hours and only see one single place that is entirely swallowed by gray. Lona. I heard a familiar voice shout from behind the fog. Aunt Susan appeared, dressed in a long airy skirt, with at least 5 necklaces around her neck and 6 rings on her fingers. Her curly hair that she dyes with henna was going in all directions. When she got close enough, she pulled me into a tight hug and gave me a kiss on each cheek. She smelled like lavender and roses. "Let's get you home, sweet girl. You must be starving." My fun and energetic aunt had made wine leaves filled with rice and herbs, which are my favorite, as well as those amazing semolina dumplings, tabbouleh, and lentil soup. Very typical Kurdish foods. They weren't quite as good as the ones my mom makes, but I didn't tell her that. After dinner we sat in the living room, drinking tea and chatting about all sorts of stuff. School, friends, Berlin. After a while I even told her about Noah, my boyfriend, but only because Susan is the only person in the family I feel like I can be candid with. Everything was going close to perfect. Inside her home, I almost forgot how eerie this village was. It was all great until it wasn't anymore. Until our conversation shifted. Susan turned her cup of tea around, maybe for a reading of the leaves or maybe it was just out of habit. "I've wanted to see you for a while now, honey. The last time you were here you were, what, 6 or 7? I get that your mother doesn't like visiting, but..." She paused for a moment. "But she's the one who made me leave Berlin," is probably what she wanted to say. My mom believes that Aunt Susan casts a bad light on our family. She probably just doesn't like the smell. You know how sensitive she is. I tried to joke, but I couldn't even look into her eyes. I hated how my mom abandoned her. I can't stand my brother at most times and I still wouldn't do this to him. "Smell?" She raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, it smells rotten. Kind of like burned eggs and gasoline. I don't know. Not in here, outside," I quickly added. Aunt Susan turned her cup back around. "Lona, when you were little, did your mom ever warn you about genes?" she asked, ignoring what I said about the scent. "Only the one from Aladdin," I laughed, but Aunt Susan's face didn't move one bit. "My mother is quite a religious person. Everything evil must stay far away." Ironically, they are quite unpredictable. Can change their shape. Not all are evil, actually. Concepts of our morality don't exactly work the same for them, as far as I understand. But some do like to inflict pain on humans and they are rather good at that, she sighed. Some might find it ridiculous, but I am very aware of them. I don't want to anger any, even if only by accident. And while you're here I wish you to respect that. Can you do that for me? I had no idea where this sudden shift in conversation had come from, but Aunt Susan was staring at my eyes, not blinking once. There was such an intensity about it. I nodded. Maybe my aunt had gotten a little crazy living here all by herself. I know I would if I had to live in this industrial little hellhole. "I'm glad to hear that, sweetie. I've written a few things down. You can memorize them later, yeah?" The evening had started off so nicely but ended with me alone, locked inside my aunt's guest room, reading a list that made me question her sanity. And my own. If you smell fire, get away as quickly as possible. They will burn you. Do not trust animals while you are here. Iron angers them. The fog is not there at all times. When it is, don't trust your mind. If it storms, go inside as quickly as possible. Do not ever stare down the well. They will pull you in. I don't scare easily, and while out I didn't find the list too disturbing. Until I came to the last warning. If you see me staring at you at night, run. Luckily I didn't catch a stare on my first night. When morning came I almost even forgot about all the weirdness. My aunt had left early for work and I decided to go grab some croissants at a bakery. The fog was hardly noticeable that morning, though. The foul scent of sulfur was still present. It got even more intense when I stepped inside the bakery, killing my hunger in an instant. But the lady behind the counter was already smiling at me, showing her big teeth. It smelled as if she'd spent the entire morning burning the bread. "What can I get you, sweetheart?" I looked down at the goods, but every single pastry was moldy, green and blue with a cotton film. Actually I'm not hungry. I just wanted to see." Her smile disappeared. "I spend every single day baking. What kind of nasty tone is that? Who the fuck even are you? Who brought you here?" She talked herself into a rage, spitting with each word. Before I could step back, she grabbed my arm and pulled me closer. "You don't belong here. You're not rotten, yet," she whispered. With her other hand, she'd grabbed a lighter and held a flame right under my hand. Finally, I pulled my arm back. "Fight or flight," I heard a voice in my head, but the one whispering flight won. Outside I checked my hand. There was no burn mark and I felt no pain. Did I just hallucinate? My mind was so muddled that I didn't even notice that the fog was back for a good minute or two. I turned back towards the bakery once more, and when I saw the grin of the lady behind the glass I started running. Of course, there had to be a correlation between the items on my aunt's list and this lady. My aunt was living in an infected place, it felt clear to me right away. My mother never spoke about demons to me, but I do know that they play an important role in our family. I used to think they were old village superstitions and never listened much when an uncle or a cousin spoke about rituals or similar, but lately, my mind has grown more interested. Ever since I've started going to a few changes myself. The thing is, it's my father's family who is into this stuff. Not my mom's. So coming to Susan, I believed to get a break. But now I knew for a fact that this place was cursed. And I was starting to wonder if I'd fallen into a trap. My nerves were a wreck. I should have run to the train station instead of my aunt's home, but I didn't. Something was keeping me from leaving. This place felt suffocating, but simultaneously it felt as if I belonged here. Those thoughts ran through my mind when I fell into the comfortable bed of Susan's guest room. She wasn't home, so I couldn't speak to her yet, and finally, exhaustion took me over and I fell asleep. When I woke up again it was already dark. I heard a knock on the door. Then a scratch. Then someone tried to open the door. Susan would have said something, but whoever it was, didn't speak. "It's fine. It's fine." I locked the door, I kept telling myself, but the rattling only became louder. And finally, I heard the squeaky noise of the door opening. Sometimes when you're scared, your eyes simply won't open. They try to shield you from what's to come. This time it was different. My eyes opened wide as if I'd just woke from a nightmare. But in reality, I was just falling into one. My eyes met Susan's, although hers looked nothing like the warm almond-shaped ones I remembered. Instead, they were turned inside out. Like socks that you fold into each other. "Chernobog," an unfamiliar voice whispered from inside her mouth. I have no idea what that word meant, but when I heard it a shock went through my entire body. It felt as if a million worms inside of my mind were being pulled apart. The creature that was wearing the skin of my aunt shuffled its feet across the floor, walking closer to my bed. Again, the voice in my mind whispered fight or flight, and this time it wanted to fight. But I remembered the words on the list. I was supposed to run. So I jumped from the bed before the thing could come any closer. A shiver went through my body when I passed it. Especially when it tried to reach for me with its fingers. I headed out the door and slammed it shut behind me. I ran into the darkness of my aunt's house, stumbling into tables and walls but not stopping until I finally stumbled into something soft that smelled like lavender and roses. "It's okay," the familiar voice of my aunt whispered. That was not me. "To be perfectly honest, I thought your uncle sent you, but I felt it was too soon to ask. I don't know how much you know about his business." "The drug business or the demons?" I wanted to ask. I learned a little while ago that my powerful uncle has access to the underworld in more ways than one. It was one of the reasons I wanted to get away from home. Well, this is where used up hosts come, my aunt continued. And your uncle sometimes sends the ones he can control. We'd turned on all the lights in the house. Susan made tea, and after a while, I slowly calmed down. The thing is, I don't know why I was so afraid. I should have been used to these things by now. I'd learned weeks ago that I myself was possessed by a creature. Not a jinn, but a different type of demon. One that I'd grown accustomed to because it gave me power and confidence. Here somehow it was much weaker though. Used up? I asked. She stayed quiet for a moment. Sometimes humans get sick, old, or they die. But the demon possessing them can stay alive. So everyone here is dead or dying? Are you? She shook her head. I'm here because your uncle didn't want me near your family. And your mother listens to what he says. But I've started to like it here. I have a purpose. I care for the lost souls. She tried to smile, but her eyes looked sad and tired. Something inside of me started pulsating, and I wondered if that's why my mom sent me here. Does my family believe that I'm a lost soul? Are they trying to get rid of me?